Thanks for having me. This is exciting. It's always nice for me to drive north instead of south in the morning. I was here a couple of months ago kind of giving a crystal ball of what I was expecting this legislative session. Now I'm here kind of in the middle of it. It's still a crystal ball. I wish I had all the answers for you, but I'll just give you a little bit of context about what's happening. I like with the clicker. Oh, there we go. Okay. I started with a slide like this last time, and it's kind of my comfort zone, so we'll get started this way. But just to give you some context of what's happening, there's been 1,040 pieces of legislation introduced this legislative session already. We usually end up with about 1,200, so that gives you some context. About 403 of them are bills that would directly impact the Washoe County School District. So that's a lot of moving parts, and I just want to reinforce that it's not just educational services, it's things like workers' comp and transportation rules and all kinds of other things that impact large employers. There's 120 days in every legislative session. As of today, we have 39 left. So we're 2/3 of the way through as of yesterday, the easy 2/3, if we're being honest. As much as I want to celebrate, the next 40 days will be really important and really intense, and everything moves really quickly. 25% of the bills died on the first deadline. That's when I did these slides a couple of weeks ago. So that's nice. That takes a few things off our plate that we can focus our energy on other things. There's $1.2 billion worth of new proposals to spend that are not in the governor's budget. 1.2 billion with a B. Those are new unfunded mandates. So that keeps me really busy trying to keep our budget situation where Superintendent Davis mentioned it without adding $1.2 billion worth of deficit. The distributive school account, that's the number we use, the per pupil number that the state gives us. Right now, what we know, it's proposed to go up 1.42%. So that's why I did a slide when we first talked a couple of months ago about the kind of complicated and broken way we fund education in Nevada. So when we talk about giving a 3% raise and the per pupil number that we're going to get is going up by 1.42%, you can see there's some confusion, some conflict there. There we go. Okay, so let's talk really quickly. I'm going to go around here because I know you guys have other things to do today, but school safety has been a big priority for this legislative session. We've talked about SB 89, which would provide some additional funding for school police officers, particularly at the middle school level, and just some additional resources around safe voice. That legislation I expect to move forward. There's some discussion about funding those initiatives with the money from the retail tax on marijuana sales. I could do like a whole hour about marijuana money if you wanted, but I'll keep moving. Read by 3, that was nice to hear some applause. That's exciting. So Assembly Bill 289 is moving. Basically, it removes the mandatory retention component at the 3rd grade level and leaves the decision around retention almost exclusively with the parent. So the child is not retained unless mom and dad or guardian say, I want my child retained. Plus a whole bunch of other things, including offering intervention and early literacy support, not just in K3, but all the way K5 or K6 at the elementary school level instead of stopping those wraparound services at 3rd grade. Pre-K, in fact, I got to run to Carson City here in a few minutes for a meeting about pre-K, but there's additional money in the governor's budget to fund pre-K services for money that's going away from the federal government, so we shouldn't see any decrease in services for our pre-K kiddos. There's discussion about an increase in services, but that's in the 1.2 billion of things that are not currently funded. A lot of discussion about mental health, how we address mental health of students, suicide prevention, just general supports for our students around mental health. Lots of things about teachers. So the big thing that I want to talk about is around teacher evaluations. Senate Bill 475 would lower the percentage of a teacher's evaluation for the student data, so the SLO or SLG, from 40% to 20, and then 15. So remember, we started at 50, 2011, then we went to 40. Now we're talking about 20 in the next year and 15 for every year after that. Again, we still have 39 days left. That bill's been transforming maybe more than any other. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's more changes to that. There's a lot of haggling around the 20 to 15, but my guess is it ends up somewhere in that neighborhood. Also, lots of discussion about the funding formula. We heard yesterday, what was the word, Tracy? The magic funding formula. I think we heard the word magic a few times. And the reason we are hearing that is that there's 39 days left, and we're talking about a fundamental wholesale revamping of the way we fund education in Nevada, and we don't have a bill yet to know exactly what the proposal is going to be and what that looks like. I do think it's coming. I do think it's going to pass. I do think it's going to be good for education in Nevada. I think there might be some short-term kind of getting over the hump, but I think in the long term it's really going to be good for education in this state. Okay, so I think I hit on all those different areas. We'll talk a little bit about the budget. It's awkward because we still have so much time left and everything's kind of happening in the bat cave and secret meetings and everybody's cutting deals about what they can and can't say. But like Tracy said, we're working with our legislative leadership to try to direct as much money as we can into education to fund not only the 3% raise, but also all the other student-centered initiatives that we're working on. The Economic Forum, it actually meets May 1st, that's a typo, next Wednesday, and they're the group that says, okay, legislature, this is how much money you have to put in your budget. Here's what we're forecasting for how much money we're going to have to spend in the entire state budget, and they can't adopt a budget until after they have that number. So that happens on Monday. My guess is they don't come with great news and say, good news, you've got $100 million to play with. My guess is they're going to say, you have exactly what you thought you had, so there's not going to be a big windfall. The education budget by law has to be passed first, and we normally see that in the last week of the legislative session. So the very end of May, the beginning of June is probably when we'll get final information about what the budget looks like. I wish I had answers. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and we could tell you from a categorical funding perspective what's going to happen with Zoom and Victory and Read by 3 and the 38 categoricals that we have in the state of Nevada, but I can't. If you have a specific question about a specific one, I'm happy to answer that, so feel free to shoot me an email. Somebody asked me, I get a lot of questions, and I'll move through this now, I'm sort of finished with the informational part, but what my normal day looks like, and I thought this was a good kind of picture, bloodshot eyes and crazy hair. But really, the real work at the legislature is around building trust for our school district. And I know I said this the last time I was here, but we spend a lot of time with individual legislators, helping them understand the policy implications of what they're proposing, helping them understand how our district operates. It's different than how different districts operate across the state. And so they need to hear from us about what that looks like. A lot of time in committee hearings, drafting amendments. Some of you may have even given me some language to put into the law. Keeping everybody in the loop and being vigilant, because we call them zombie bills. Nothing is ever dead until it's really dead and over. They resurrect in lots of different places that you wouldn't expect. So that's what the work looks like on a daily basis. Let's see here. Ways for you to stay involved if you want to. The legislative website, Nellis, is actually really excellent and user-friendly. So if you go, just Google Nellis in Nevada, you can see bills. You can watch committee hearings live, or they record them all, get to know who your legislators are and interact with them. It sounds silly, but the entire legislative process is documented on Twitter. So if you want to know what's happening at any particular moment, I would follow that hashtag. Other groups like Fund Our Future, the Gwynn Center, WEA, others are putting out a lot of content about summaries and what's happening, so that's a good way to stay posted on the latest. This is only the beginning. I wish that the work was over when the legislative session ends, but then we've got roughly 70 days between the end of the legislative session and the day that school starts, conceivably to make a lot of changes in the laws that, in order to conform with what it is. Some implementation dates are different, but there's just not very much time to get all that work done, assuming they pass 403 bills that we care about. So we'll keep working on it. let's see, I think that's the end. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But I just want to say thank you for the work that you guys do. It makes my job a lot easier to have an amazing product to sell to our elected officials, to be proud of the work that we do, and be able to present that. I think we're an exemplar across the state, so it makes me proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. That picture she showed of herself is a true picture. There's times that it's 9 o'clock at night and something takes a curveball and I have to talk her off a ledge. And then there's some days that you have to talk me off the ledge. So thank you for partnering and doing good work for Washoe down there.